Okay, we are recording
He's coming.
and broadcasting, just looking for our audience.
He's coming.
Okay, welcome to the planning board meeting for April 5th, 2023. I will begin by calling the roll. Alden Clark.
Here.
Beth Delisle is not here. Bob Coop.
Here.
Katie Pennington.
Here.
Heather Rogers.
Here.
Don Walters.
Here.
Richard Gayer.
Here.
And we have four and more. Okay, the first item on the agenda, and I guess we'll take these up. We'll talk about them together, vote on them separately. We have a public hearing for Hale Business Park LLC at 21 Malcolm Point Road for a major site plan review. And we also have an approval not required plan for the same property.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Lisa Mead, Teller and Costa, 30 Green Street, Newburyport. With me this evening is Craig Messina and Patrick Reddy, the owners of the LLC for this property, and Steve Sawyer, the engineer on the project, and my colleague, Ryan Clemens. This is for the property at 21 Mountain Point Drive, as the chair said. This is our second meeting. At the end of our first meeting, we had some things that you wanted to see wrapped up. So I think that we can go through those. So if you go to the next slide, please. So as we noted, we needed to provide an A&R plan, which we have, and we can talk about that after we go through the rest of the special permit, or excuse me, the site plan review. But the A&R plan does show sufficient frontage for both of the proposed lots A3 and A4 on Mountain Point and also on Hale Street. The plans also needed to be updated, which Steve had been working on, and I'll let him go through those in a minute. But suffice it to say that they have been peer reviewed and signed off on by Phil Christensen via an email on March 31st that I think you all should have received, and also approved by the city engineer on April 4th. We also had an email to that effect. The city engineer wanted to make sure the sight lines were marked on the plan, which those have been added to the plan. Additionally, the board asked for a separate page that just showed the landscaping and didn't have all the other layers, including a table of materials and plantings to be made. And so that was also provided in the plan set. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Steve to review the changes and updates in the plan. You can go to the next slide.
Next.
So you get the whole set, right?
Yeah, it's a whole set. You get to jump down. There you go. Okay, yeah, that was good. Okay, so after the last meeting, I think at the planning board members, there were some comments regarding snow storage. I indicated some snow storage in the public way. That was removed. It was also coordinated with the planting plan. I indicate the snow storage in the blue and the cyan color. There's ample areas for pushing the snow around and storing on site. If it is some extraordinary year, if it does get tight, they may have to remove it from the property. But for all normal snow events and winters, we're all set with that. There was also, I believe that was at the other item is the trash is in the lower right corner. That actually displaced the parking space, but we're still provide the required parking per the zoning requirements. So I think that may have been another change. I can't remember if that was shown prior to that meeting or not. There was some comments from Phil Christensen regarding the stormwater. He had asked me it's a very small site. He had asked me to divide it up into 3 separate drainage areas, which I did. I went through the process of doing that. It didn't change the size of the detention basin at all. I had to modify a couple of the orifices to control the rate off the property. And as confirmed with this final peer review, our offsite rate does not increase, so it meets standard 2. And the other standards, the water quality, TSS removal, we comply with that. And then he agreed with me due to the poor soils and high groundwater that the groundwater recharge was not required. We will achieve some recharge with this in the sumps of both the stormwater wetland and also the sump of the floor bag. But you're not allowed to take credit per the DEP regulations. So that was all vetted out through with Phil. There was, we resubmitted the calcs. He had one last small round of calculations regarding, he'd asked for me to expand the drainage area, then the entire drainage area, which what that does, it kind of, it reduces the percentage of impact. So that's the percentage of area you're impacting, it reduces the overall appearance of increase of flow. But my response to him was, we meet it with the smaller drainage area, it's more accurate, more precise. And he said, yeah, we already comply with standard 2, you don't have to do that. With this final email, he agreed. I think they said there was a couple typos, but it had no reflection or no impact on the calculations themselves. Also with John Eric White, he had a couple comments. One of them was the coordination with the possible improvements along Hale Street to make sure that we had a suitable grade running down towards the gutter line on Hale. In the event that if there's a curve put in, if you put in a curve, you'll raise the edge of the road by 6 inches. And if there's any adjustments in grade, the two-way left entry exit, I think we're about 1.5 feet above, so we have plenty of clearance there. I think on the right exit only, we're about 12 inches above. I ended up lifting that, the high point, sloping down by 6 inches. So that was just modified slightly to take into consideration if there's any changes coming down Hale Street in the future. And also he had questions about the sight lines. As you can see in the magenta lines, I added the sight lines, and there was a note on the plan that we are to, before CFO, before the certificate of occupancy, the city engineer is supposed to review the sight lines with the engineer of record. So those are added to the plan. If we jump to the next one, what we did is we added a landscape only plan for clarity with the planting schedule. So that was added to the plan set. And that's about it. There weren't too many changes. Most of it was just going back and forth with Phil regarding the technical aspects of the drainage report. That is it. And can move on or take questions.
Any questions for the applicant? This is one question, which has to do with, and I'm not challenging on this, since Phil is located fine with it, but just as for clarification for me, in the places where you've got you talk about the depth to seasonal high groundwater being less than 24 inches. And there are the 3 test pits, which are in the areas of the wetland and rain garden. Is the base of those facilities going to be where they are now, or?
No, so we excavate down. So what happens is, I think what you do is you cut down and you get the bottom of the basin to be interacting with the seasonal high groundwater. So it's just that large basin, the larger basin on the right. So you'll note that I think the bottom elevation is right about at the elevation of where the seasonal high groundwater is observed.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And just another thing, in terms of grading, you're basically on the westerly side, there's kind of a knoll there.
Yeah.
You're kind of bringing that down about 4 feet. looks like.
Yeah, we had about a 4-foot cut there. Yep, correct.
Else? Do you have anything else you'd like to offer?
I don't request your approval of both the A&R plan as well as the site plan.
Well, I guess I'll have to open the public hearing. If anybody in the public who wishes to make a comment on this, let me know. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And so we have in the staff report some proposed conditions. And then Phil had added another proposed condition that the stormwater pollution prevention plan be submitted and approved by the city prior to the start of construction. I don't think that was in your original list, was it?
That's correct, and also, as I think the applicant mentioned, the city engineer had suggested, or, yeah, sorry, Bill Christensen had suggested a SWIP plan, the stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Yeah.
With the city engineers also immediate comment on the sightline, so I assume that that would also be as added to condition.
And so the other, I don't think we need to go through the findings in detail here. So I guess the first thing would be, if you've already voted to grant the waivers, correct?
You voted that at the first.
So, so we have 3 draft motions before us, well, actually 2. What is the difference between the first and the second? Here, one is to.
Yeah, I think we're talking on the first one here because we're really talking about closing out, again, I'll defer to board, but closing out and approving tonight with reference to the special conditions in the staff report and the 2 that were recommended by the 2 engineers, 1 condition each of them, and approving or referencing the decision tonight rather than you to review a written decision at a future meeting, which is what that other option was for.
So I would entertain a motion based on the first draft motion in the staff report with the additional 2 conditions from the engineer.
So moved.
Thank you, Don. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Alden. I will do the roll call. Alden,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Richard.
yes,
Okay, it's unanimous.
I'm sorry, Don made the motion?
Don made the motion.
And who seconded?
I hope.
All, okay.
Okay, so we move on to the approval not required.
So on the approval not required plan, I think, is that it, Andy? Yeah. You can see the first lot that is being developed takes its frontage off of Hale Street. And then the second lot in the rear that's going to be donated takes its frontage off of both Hale Street and Malcolm Hoyt. Both are far in excess. Well, the front lot meets the requirement and the back lot is far in excess of the frontage requirements.
So in this case, we've talked, I think, in the past about the issue of acceptance or not by the city, but we don't need to include this in this motion, right?
Well, actually, it's not in the A&R plan that you're doing it, so on the site plan, I think we covered that with the 2 conditions from the staff report. So effectively, there's no reason to, and there wouldn't be any privilege on the board's part to attach that condition with the A&R plan endorsement.
Are there any other questions from the board? If not, then I would look for a motion to endorse the approval not required plan for 21 Malcolm Hoyt site.
So moved.
Alden?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, roll call, Alden,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Richard.
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Now you can enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to review and discuss the zoning recommendations from our March 1st hearing on the ITIF proposed amendment. And you have 2 documents that were sent out the other day. One is a memo from the zoning administrator in terms of a housekeeping amendment. And the other is a draft report that I put together that says everything except what we wrote. And so I guess I don't really have anything else that I need to add to this because I've kind of put down my thoughts pretty much in the report. We talked about it last time. But I would be interested in any comments from members of the board as to how you want to proceed with this. And if you have an idea about which direction you want to go on a motion for recommendation to the city council. Don?
Rick, I thought it was fine, and, I agree with Jennifer's comments. I think, to be a bit more specific is good. As I used to tell people that used to work for me, to be specific is terrific. So I'll stay with that model. The only other item I would say, which is really editorializing, is your very last sentence where you said, perhaps we should also consider overnight parking or increased overnight parking at the parking garage. So the only thing I would throw out for your consideration, the rest of the board's consideration is should one make it more broadly of an overall parking management plan? Because, I just think that's just one piece of it. There's other areas, and we've all seen with spillover, why people don't want to pay for 2 hours or whatever they do. So that would be my only comment, but it's a minor one. Thank you.
That's a good point, and I guess I should have said that, maybe that last section. I put in the last section because I thought it was an important part of our discussion, but it doesn't directly relate to the recommendation. So I'd be happy to strengthen that. I'd be happy to cut it. However members felt about that.
I think related to that last section, and number one, I agree with the first part of your summary. In terms of parking for downtown residents and the explanation as it relates to the conversion of existing buildings, I think that generally I agree with, but I think the definition of who gets to use the overnight parking needs to be very specific. To me, I think that the new mixed-use projects that we refer to in the early part of your summary, like the new project at the foot of Market Street, I still think those projects should be required to provide the residential parking requirement on site. So I think this explanation works for me as long as it relates to the conversion of existing properties to a residential use that may require parking. But new development, I think, needs to abide by the amendment and provide parking on site.
And just to note on that, I agree with those comments as well. That makes sense to me.
So are we talking about the last section? Are we talking about any change to the recommendations? Are we just talking about that last section about talking about parking for downtown residents?
For me, it's just the last section. Just being specific about what that.
I guess I have a contrarian view to Bob on that. I still really am not in support of the amendment at all. I did like the addition of the narrative at the end, and I would probably go even further and make it broader. I do think that the clarification of how the 300 feet is calculated, I can't disagree with that. Being more specific is only a good thing. But now we've linked things that are kind of not really related to each other. So I just, again, to restate, I'm not in favor of this. And one alternative, I think we mentioned at one point, was to say that the board was mixed. I don't know if we're trying to get consensus tonight, but I don't know how others feel, but I'd be okay with the memo saying the board was mixed.
Yeah, Jamie, if I'm not mistaken, in the past, what we've done is we've said X number of members approved and one did not approve or something like that. So it's a bit more specific. No pun intended.
That works too.
Richard, did you have anything?
Sorry about that. No extra comment.
Okay, thank you. Didn't want to forget to look
No,
over
I
my
appreciate,
shoulder.
no, I appreciate that. I had to step to a point where I could still listen, but it's fine.
Okay, well, that being the case, is there a motion? Well, I guess the first question is, two questions. One, is there a motion on which direction we want to go on the recommendation, the highlighted yellow text? I would welcome a motion in either direction.
Well, unless it provides an issue with the rest of the members, I would put forth to recommend, the first yellow line is to recommend that the zoning ordinance be amended to set forth the separate.
Thank you.
As compared to no action, no comment.
Is there a second? Second, okay. So the motion is to use the first language to recommend that the zoning ordinance be amended as set forth in the proposed ordinance, except that this provision should not apply to hotels and inns, use number 105. So with that, I will move to a roll call on that. Alden. Take your time.
Yeah. Yes.
Bob,
Yeah.
Jamie,
No.
Heather,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Richard.
yes,
I will vote yes. Okay, the second item is, do we want to support the zoning administrator's recommendation about being more specific in terms of the clarification of the 300-foot radius?
I think so, yes. I think that makes sense to me.
Motion, okay, second?
A second.
Second. 5 seconds. Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, so roll call on that. Alden,
Yes.
Bob,
Yeah.
Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Richard,
yes,
Rick, yes. And I guess the final thing would be guidance for me in terms of that last section. I heard Bob say, and a couple others agree, that we want to be more specific about this, that, I have a comment from Don, first of all, that we should be talking more broadly about a parking management plan strategy for the downtown. And then we also heard about being more specific in terms of referencing this overnight parking change to be specifically for properties that convert as opposed to new residential properties or new construction. How do we want to handle that? I guess I would offer that we could say both of those things. I think that Jamie might be in opposition to that, which is fine. I go from there. Yes. Does anybody want to say anything about that? Do we need a motion for that? Should I just go ahead and add that into the motion?
I think it's fine to add it.
We'll just,
I guess where I'm coming from is, and I think that fundamentally, we should have a position that residential parking needs to be provided on site, on those residential sites. The existing commercial property, which does not have on-site parking, which uses the streets, that's grandfathered in. And I think converting those uses to residential use, as you said in your summary, Rick, that might put undue pressure on residential neighborhoods and streets, and that would be a reason to use the parking lots as a safety valve related to that. But I do think, and I feel very strongly that residential development ought to include parking on site as just a matter of course. That we should reinforce that where possible.
any other comments? I'll try to capture this. Okay, so I think we're done with that topic. move on to the next item, which is approval of minutes on March. Sent some comments in to Caitlin. Anybody have any heads, concerns that have not been submitted to her? Seth?
I submitted one comment as well.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion to approve the minutes of March 15th.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second. Thank you, Jim. Okay, final roll call. Next to final roll call. Alden,
Yes.
Bob,
Yeah,
Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
I was absent 16.
Don,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So it passes. Okay, moving right along, other updates. I guess one big update is that we are going to be shifting to a 7-member board. City council approved the ordinance, so. And Don, I think you said you probably were not going to be re-upping.
Well, if it's irrelevant, it's a moot point.
No? Well, I guess your term expires, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
so you're not, you are not re-upping, okay. So, we got a couple more meetings to deal with you.
3 to be exact.
Okay, and you can always come back as well.
That's what I was just gonna say.
That's a lot.
Associate.
That's okay. Respectfully,
Okay, do you have any other updates for us, Andy?
No, I mean, some of you might be aware, we have, now I guess the city's identified a new DPS director. It's actually Wayne Amaral, who was the deputy director a couple years back. I think it's a good thing. I think Rick probably knows him well from some of the traffic safety discussions. I think we could, ask him further for us in a public works side, but I've been holding up a little bit on getting fully in depth into the MBTA communities sort of build out discussion, because I really would like to have closing the loop with our public service department, the water division, and of course the sewer division. Just really getting an assessment of what is our, build out capacity and support, and do we have any distribution lines or collection lines that, we need to think about in these discussions, because, as planners, I think we need to think long-term about the city. It's built out in the 3 geographic areas we've been thinking about, not so much the National Register historic area, right, where there's gonna be sort of, smaller infill, maybe, build other, modifications are happening for relatively small changes. But in the Newburyport West area, this 4-yard district expanded by the MBTA communities guidelines to some degree, and then the Story Avenue area, recognizing that we also serve water and take sewer from 2 other communities. So we have to think about, or at least on the water side. So we have to think about, how we can support that build out, and also our discussions with the other 2 communities about the intermunicipal agreements or IMAs we have with them. And I just want to make sure we have a good case for that information before we get fully in depth into the discussion. We're going to have already had a couple of exchanges on that. In that direction, but we'll be picking up that discussion. Wayne's expected to start in the beginning of May, so I'll be able to sit down with him and finally get, I think, what I need from them and their water supply consultants. Information there.
Just to be clear, though, we have to do this. So it's not a question of whether the utilities constraints are going to prevent us from doing it. We have to zone, so maybe where we zone.
Yes, that's correct. And also, I guess it really goes to, we're going to be adopting zoning, again, for the state there. What I want to do is make sure we're all collectively, the city, the city council, from the finance bonding perspective, thinking about what are the infrastructure improvements we might need to make over time. The state says, well, you don't need to have that build out happen, you just need to adopt zoning. But the practical reality is, once you make something as of right, there's a chance one way or another, at some point, someone's going to take advantage of that permitting path. We actually had units, the complex, the sort of triangular shaped complex from the right side of Route 1, across from the Haley site that was put in some years back. That one actually was put on hold to hook up to utilities until we got the Craft Road lift station offline. So, for instance, I just want to make sure we're being realistic about, where we're able to do some of this build out, and then backing from what Newburyport needs into what we can still provide to the other 2 communities realistically. And just recognizing that there are potentially some infrastructure upgrades that would have to go with some of that, whether that's mitigation by a developer based on their build out, or whether it's the city. Just want to make sure we're being realistic about it, because because we don't, always see the perfect ideal planner's exercise and think long-term about what's gonna happen before we just zone areas.
Actually, I have a question on our service to the two communities. I've heard that mentioned more than once. Would you happen to know, are those agreements in perpetuity, or are they renewable at our option every 5 years, et cetera? Because it seems to me, even if you just said, well, if for some reason we don't have enough water or something, or what are we gonna do? Maybe the developer would do something, and I would put forth the case to say, well, if the developer was gonna put X number of dollars, so they want to put X those dollars to Newburyport and cut off the water service, whatever. It's just a business operating, it's a business issue in my opinion.
With the two communities?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
My understanding
if
is.
it's right, forever, that's a different issue. You have an option, so I was just curious.
Yeah, 2025, I believe is where we're sort of, and this is why probably why I need to wrap up now, discussions, analysis and discussions now. My concern would just be because we don't really have, in my opinion, sort of a whole lot of continuity going back years to discussions previously, what we have today, our understanding of the systems that are out there, and, again, with the admin side of public services changing, we can have water division, changes over time. I think that approaching 2025 is going to take proactive planning starting now before we get there and have those discussions with municipal officials and other communities saying what we can commit to. So that's the time frame, I guess, that I have been thinking about. When Jamie Tippolo from Public Services left, he was the one sort of overseeing a lot of the sewer side of things, particularly from Island, and he was my point of contact with Public Services. And we're talking about the 2025 time frame, recognizing that it might not be brought up in other people's vision, until we're approaching that time frame, but it's best practice to get ahead of that. That's what I'm trying.
I have a question about, seems like it was 10 or 15 years ago, but it could be way off, that the city adopted an overlay for Blue Street relating to, was it the sewer?
The betterment.
The betterment, yeah, right. Does that have to do with developing new capacity, or was that for something we've already done?
So part of it was infrastructure. That's, I don't pretend to be the expert in that area. This goes actually something pretty my time, and I don't know the details of it, but it was based on infrastructure that's already been done, and also potential demand that's added to the system, essentially. So there's the connection fee, then there's the sort of incremental, betterment based on pros. I don't, again, propose to the expert in how that's calculated, but it both was for infrastructure that has already been done and for additional demand that might be added.
But it was probably based on the actual zoning. It didn't assume that there was going to be a conversion to a higher demand.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and again, all these things, should be considered collectively. It's going to be hard to sort of bring everybody to the table and make sure all aspects are being reviewed simultaneously or in connection with each other, as opposed to isolated discussions on the water side, zoning discussions over here, and not necessarily seeing where they connect with each other.
Anything else? Anything else anybody else would like to raise? Didn't quite make it within half an hour. In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call on that. Oh,
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Jamie.
Yes.
Heather.
Yes.
Don.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
I vote yes also. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.